So I just did 2 hours and 45 minutes on a subject that you're going to see, and the microphone battery died at 2 hours and 15 minutes. So I've got 30 minutes left on the table, which I will do in a second installment next week. But as you will see, I want to help out the guy that requested the video and get this out. So we'll put out what we've got the audio for, and then the video will end abruptly when the microphone died. So cue the banjo. I'm Chris, this is P2T Canine, and welcome back to Dog Talks. This morning, we're going to tackle a very broad, very deep, nuanced, and complex subject, and that is going to be canine integration into a team setting, both for CQB and open area operations. No time to waste. Don't need to screw around with a lot of stuff. First and foremost, P2T Canine is an equipment manufacturing company. It is equipment that I have thought of over the course of my canine career that I wanted to produce, and now I am producing that. Please go over to p2tcanine.com. Check out all the equipment offerings that I have over there. So, again, cutting straight down to it this morning because we got a long way to go and a short time to get there. Thank you, Jerry Reed. Love that guy. Anyway, these always run long, and today is going to be no exception because of the subject matter at hand. So, we're only a week apart. Usually I'm maybe 2 weeks, try to go no more than 3 weeks between videos. We're only a week off of the prior one because there is a guy that I have worked with here in recent days, this summer as a matter of fact, who is trying to spin up a new dog, and this gentleman and his partner are involved in some very high-end operations. They are doing them CONUS rather than OCONUS outside the continental United States. These guys are law enforcement out there getting it done, and they're trying to spin up 2 new dogs to integrate into high-risk, highly complex, flexible environments, very, very fluid tactical environments. And I have been requested by this gentleman to do a dog talk on this subject. So here we're going to try to cover the waterfront and help this guy out as much as possible. I will reference when I do, because again, all of this stuff has tendrils that tie together. There's not really anything in dog work that is truly compartmentalized. So with that being said, I will reference other videos in my series. So as I go along, I will point those connections out and try not to sidebar too deep down that road. First of all, why am I giving this talk, and why should you listen? If this is the first time you're watching one of my videos, I got into law enforcement I was in law enforcement and got into the canine segment of that in 1999. And I have seen a lot in the last 25 years. I was just born at the right time to be of the right age to have experienced canine pre-September 11th, 2001, which is the segment we're going to refer to in all of my videos, including this one, as the GWAT era. And we're going to look at the GWAT era as September 11th, 2001, when operations began in Afghanistan and then Iraq. And then we're going to consider that all the way through probably 2016. We were really on the wind down. 2018, and then obviously the disastrous pullout by Biden. But we're going to look at a 20-year period known as the Global War on Terror, the GWAT, and all of the lessons learned and advances that we made in that. And now I am still active in canine in these roles at present day. So I've got a 25-year and counting trajectory through all of this, and watching law enforcement into the military side, back into law enforcement. Why should you listen to me as well? Because we have had a lot of information gained through hard-fought mistakes and losses. I was the first trainer hired for SOF MPC. Well, I'm already jumping ahead. So during my law enforcement career, I was on my training day on September 11th, 2001, shooting a rifle off the trunk of my marked car at the venue where we were going to do some training. And I heard Mancow Muller, who was syndicated through Knoxville at the time, screaming on the radio that a plane just hit the World Trade Center. So I was on my training day when that happened. And shortly after that, the contract era started, and I was on a contract for the United States Army, working direct combat roles, not a gate guard, not force protection, not screening trucks, going out and doing combat missions before SOF MPC started. During this period, I have worked with every, and when I say every, that means every special operations or special operations forces element that has a canine program as part of it. And during that time, I have worked with multiple law enforcement agencies, from the biggest to the smallest. Again, backing up and picking up things as I go. While I was at my law enforcement agency before September 11th, 2001, our entire canine program, which was 3 of us, was pulled over and tasked to a massive federal high-risk warrant service. And this centered in Cocke County, Tennessee, which is on the North Carolina line. Cocke County Sheriff's Department was not involved because they were viewed as a very loose-lipped, perhaps even semi-corrupt agency that might have been involved with or adjacent to some of these activities going on. Now, again, this is over 20 years ago, and hopefully that's changed and it's not the case anymore. I'm just telling you the facts as they are when this happened. So the FBI and the ATF were investigating. They weren't even on parallel tracks at the time, but these 2 investigations started to converge. And there are FBI agents and ATF agents and DEA all converging on this epicenter in the Cocke County area, and they start running into each other and finding out, hey, all of the angles that we're following, all of these roads lead to the same spot. So there was a massive joint warrant service and takedown, and it involved Hamlin County, Morristown. They brought in Birmingham, Alabama SWAT, Houston SWAT was there, and this thing was massive. It was so big that if you are old enough or you pay enough attention to federal agencies, Louis Freeh, who was the director of the FBI at the time, we were at a junkyard at one of the particular hits, and we're doing the post-assault exploitation. We're finding all of the dope hides, looking all around, policing up the last few stragglers, seeing if anyone's hiding. And a Learjet comes in and kind of does this half-moon orbit, does a low wing tip orbit around this particular location we were at. And I said, man, that is weird. Why is a Learjet running that kind of a pattern over top of this? And one of the FBI agents on scene, he said, that's Louis Freeh. The director just got on the Learjet at Quantico and did a flyover because it's this big. This is the size of an operation that we're looking at. This is so large in scope and scale and duration that the director of the FBI did a flyover of the operation. So that was my first taste of really high-end direct action canine integrated warrant service and takedown. We've done other felony warrant services and stuff at my agency, but again, we're talking about it, FBI, DEA, SWAT elements from major metropolitan areas. and this was all pre-global war on terror. So that was my first look at it. Then we go into, I'm in Iraq in 2005 in Operation Iraqi Freedom 3, and trying to improvise and learn on the fly and insert myself into what's going on when we really didn't know exactly how this was going to work. I mean, we kind of had ideas, and that's the reason that the whole SOF MPC and all the other programs, do your own internet Google research and you can figure out what that means. I'm going to be specific where I can be specific and vague where I still want to be vague. So all of these programs were pulling from the law enforcement community, because up until the GWAT, the special operations community had no experience with tracking, biting dogs, doing interior building searches. This was all being developed kind of on the fly, and the knowledge base being pulled from was the law enforcement community. So with that being said, I'm in Iraq on the fly trying to figure this thing out and doing the best that I could at the time to create solutions on the move. Following that, I ran the first ever SOF MPC course, and after running the first basic course ever, I was hired as one of the first of the first 3 trainers for the SOF MPC program writ large, and went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina in the employ of 7th Special Forces Group. So that is 2007 up for almost 8 years. And during that time, this is the gut of the GWAT. There will be a retired E8 who will watch this, who was with me at 7th Group. He and I planned and resourced and executed the first ever advanced handler course for SOF MPC, and that was executed in January of 2008. And I had already deployed to Afghanistan with 7th Group in OEF 10 to be precise, in 2007. And I was asked, after running that advanced course in January of 2008, if I would stay in the rear as all of 7th Group forward deployed with all of our dog teams. Could I stay in the rear and continue to repeat this course as the other SF groups and Ranger battalions came online, and MARSOC as well, which I did. So I did nothing but back-to-back advanced courses for the entire calendar year. CY 2008 was me fine-tuning, enhancing the course, the period of instruction for the advanced handler course. And these dog teams, for all of that year, I was graduating them, me and another gentleman, 3rd Special Forces Group, also co-located at the time at Fort Bragg, came online in 2008. And credit where credit is due, Roy Putnam was there with me. And he and I, along with the 3rd Group Kennel Master, who's now also retired, who went on to become the Special Forces Command Program Manager, and with the help of my first Team Sergeant Kennel Master of 7th Group, who went on to become the USASOC Program Manager, we ran this thing back to back to back for the entire calendar year. And in many cases, these guys would leave, and within 2 to 4 weeks, they were graduating the advanced course and they were on a plane to Iraq or Afghanistan. So we were the last stop, the last training input that these dog teams had before they went in theater, and we were extremely successful. Very blessed. Never leave that part out of it. You don't want to have so much hubris. You think that you're the be-all, end-all and have all the answers. But we did fine-tune a course, and after that, I went everywhere. And then there was also, for a period of years, a Special Operations Canine seminar that was hosted in the Fort Bragg area that I participated in. So I have touched every single program, and some of them for extended periods, and I'll leave it there. Everyone has had failures. Anyone at any of these programs saying that they haven't had any of the problems that I'm going to outline, they're liars. Either they are brand new to the program and they don't have enough actual historical hands-on because their participation is from 2018 or above. Some of these guys have only been in these programs the last 2 to 4 years, and they're telling me that they've never had the problems that we're going to outline in this video, and they don't understand that I was there working with their predecessors who are retired now and off doing other things, that yes, you did have these problems, and to pretend that you didn't is to really commit a disservice to the community and to the program. Excellence and acumen and skill and knowledge are hard-fought commodities, and you really only know what you've got when you have failed and when you have had major problems. And to say that you control knowledge and information and excellence and skill and acumen, and to pretend like you never had these failures or had any problems or setbacks, is absolutely a lie. And you shouldn't perpetrate that and put that out there, because you don't know how to get skill and excellence and acumen if you haven't failed. If you have had a ton of successes, you're largely doing it at this point in time on the shoulders of someone else or their program and their failures, or you haven't pushed yourself far enough in what you can achieve to the point of failure. That's why in motorsports, NASCAR, things like that, if you are on the envelope, you are standing at the edge of loss of control and failure. So if your dog program has never had a failure, then you haven't pushed hard enough, you haven't gone up there to the envelope, you haven't been doing 200 miles per hour up against the wall with somebody right next to you stealing your air, getting ready to lose control. So it is only the programs that have tried to push for what lies beyond that last success, and then they find where that failure is, that they can really say, yes, we are improving, and we know what that hard edge of the map looks like about what's possible. And if we get over that edge of the map, did we accomplish that by luck or a set of happy circumstances, some serendipitous chain of events, or were we really forging new ground because we thought that was the edge of the map? So last week was the first time that I briefed from pre-prepared notes, and this is going to be second time in a row because this is just too long and too broad, and I've got to get right down to it. So I've got my daughter's whiteboard out here with me in the shop today because we are going to have to do some caveman art time to explain a bunch of this. And I don't know if it was a hit from last week, but it's back, and I'm going to try to draw big enough, and I may get up and go behind the camera and check and make sure that you can see this. So first of all, and I'm not here to speak about agencies by name or operations by name. The intent is not to embarrass or bring shame or humiliation on anyone. The dog teams that I'm doing the video primarily for and hoping to help other people as well, I've gotten 2 lengthy direct messages on Instagram. And if you need to reach out to me reach out. I hate that. That is just a saying that has been developed over the last 10 years and makes me want to wash my own mouth out with soap. If you need to get in contact with me, ask questions, try to get some help, I'm happy to do so. Instagram, the company email, you can find me. It's not a big deal, and I'm happy to help. So with that being said, they're having some problems because right now they are out there with young dogs that are still in the developmental process. They are still trying to show these dogs what they need from them and what their operational environment looks like. And one of the dogs in particular is having problems during hits where they have a compliant subject or where it is empty. And I've got it further down here in my notes, specifically talking about what came to be known during the GWAT as a dry hole or an empty target, someone where a place where you go to a building, an objective, and no one is there, and you do a full-on assault and it's empty. So this guy's having problems with compliant subjects or targets right now where no one is there. So with that being said, we're going to start at the bottom of this with drive. So our handler is saying that when they have a compliant subject, he's trying to maintain focus on the subject and build drive in his dog, and he's restraining him by a flat collar and patting him up on the side and giving him prompts to watch him and trying to fire him up on a compliant subject to make sure that the dog understands who the target is. Now, this is an accepted and tried and true methodology, but there is a piece of information that we have to add to that, and that is talking about drive. Drive is really, at the end of the day, a rising energy level that is a type of frustration, and a frustration that only has one fork in the road and it can only go two directions. And that is either an expressed frustration or the inability to express that frustration. So I hate being anthropomorphic. I rail against that in all of my videos pretty much, and now is no exception, but there are some parallels. Anthropomorphism, assigning human explanations and human values to animal behavior and trying to explain what animals do or how to train them through human behaviors. This is no exception, but there is a parallel in this one. So with canine drive, I'm going to discuss human sex drive and the sexual interaction of humans as part of this. So when you are building drive for the human sex interaction, we're going to call that foreplay, because it is. What is foreplay? Foreplay, we all know specifically what it is. Don't just stick with me. It is a series of events that begins to build drive and raise motivation for a particular act. And it also builds a sense of frustration. Now, that frustration can be valuable and channeled to a healthy direction, but it can also bifurcate into that other road of an unhealthy direction. And this is a direct correlation with building drive with a dog. Now, very soon I will be 50 years old. There is a difference between the 18-year-old version of me and the 50-year-old version of me. The amount of frustration during foreplay that I was willing to put up with at 18 versus 50 is wildly different. Here's 18 and here's 50. At 50, yes, the building, the foreplay, the building of frustration, the building of drive is enjoyable and important, but the threshold for frustration is much lower. Now, frustration can be expressed in one of two ways, with dogs and with people. You're either going to move into the shutdown phase where, okay, you have built drive and built frustration, and I see no way to express that frustration. There is not an outlet, and I am going to break contact from the situation, or the dog is going to break contact from the situation and go into shutdown mode. Or for people, for humans in the sexual analogy here, if they have a lack of impulse control, this can go off the rails, and this is where sexual assaults and rapes can stem from, because that frustration has no outlet. It has no off-ramp in order to express itself. Now, that physical aggression is not a healthy avenue and is not allowed. It is not permitted and should never be tolerated. But for those in our society who have no impulse control, who don't have a set of values and ethics, sometimes that is where this leads. For your dog who cannot express that, now we're going to be looking at behaviors where that frustration, that outlet, if I'm trying to build drive and point that dog at a target, but I do not allow the dog to have that target, that dog can turn back and aggress the handler, can start to get some extremely energetic physical behaviors, flip, gator roll, try to get free from the handler, try to twist your hand up in the collar, try to free itself to go and express that frustration on the target that you've shown him. So again, that threshold of frustration between 18 and 50. So where I could take that frustration for hours and hours and maybe even days, at 50, okay, we're adults. We both know what we're here to do. I'm married, happily married, been married over 10 years now. But there's a point where, okay, we have built drive and I'm sufficiently frustrated. Either we are going to express that frustration and have an outlet, or I'm just going to get up and walk away and go somewhere else. I will go shoot guns or get on the side-by-side and ride around. I'm going to go do something, go work out, but I'm going to hit that limit of frustration and break contact and just go engage in something else. So this week I was training with a law enforcement agency, and they wanted to do some back tie bites, and I'm watching what they're doing, and this exact same subject came up. So not just the young team that we're trying to help out and develop today, but another law enforcement agency, because the understanding of this and the misapplication of it is pretty rampant. So I used to watch The Price is Right as a kid, the Bob Barker version. I'm sure Drew Carey's a great guy, but I don't watch The Price is Right anymore, haven't for decades. But when I was a kid, I used to enjoy it. And there was a game in particular, and even these younger law enforcement handlers I was working with last week still knew the game. Apparently it's still part of The Price is Right. So here we go to the caveman art time. And I have used that period that I referenced for all of the advanced courses in 2008. I used this exact same thing even back then. So there is a particular game in The Price is Right where there's a mountain with a peak and it drops off the other side, and there's a little snow cap up here, and you've got this little mountain climber, and he's got his pickaxe, and you want to get as close to the peak as possible without toppling over the top. And so the little mountain climber is chugging along, and they're playing some yodeling music, and he's coming up here towards the top. And to win the game, you want to do as well as possible to get the most that you can get. But if you go over the top, oh, and they even had a little sound effect, oh, and the guy tumbles off the other side, and you lose the game on The Price is Right. Why is The Price is Right game relevant to what we're talking about today? Because this is your dog, and this is building drive, and right here is the peak. And every dog has a peak on this mountain where there is a limit to what they will withstand as they climb that peak. And when they get to the top, when they tumble off the other side, it's not just that the drive is going away, that it's going down the toilet and you lost everything that you built up to this point. Another issue is a lot of handlers don't have a feel for their dog's threshold about where the top of this peak is, and to be able to realize that and stop and preserve what they have accomplished up to this point before they go over the top. And I have witnessed it in many countries with many different agencies and organizations. If you don't stop right here and you go over the top, now we're into that bifurcated option that I talked to you about with the dogs. Once they hit this peak and the frustration is no longer something that they care to endure or participate in, now you get the flipping, the rolling, the attempt at escape. You get a dog that might try to aggress the handler. All of these are them expressing that frustration in an outcome that we don't want. The other option of that is just the frustration, the cap it, and walk away. Out you go. So with that being said, we don't want either of those. The lesser of two evils would just be the dog that gets frustrated and wants to break contact and just walk off, doesn't try to aggress the handler, doesn't get over energetic. But again, the dog has lost the picture. And now when we show them that again, are they going to have the lasting memory of, yeah, you're showing me something fun that I'd like to do, but I'm never going to be able to get there. So I'm not going to be as motivated or pay any attention to it at all the next time. The other one is, and I draw a line over to the e-collar past and present video of the old school e-collar where they hit the stem and the dog aggresses the handler or trainer. And during aggressing that handler or trainer, they have to let go of the stem or inadvertently let go of the stem. And now the dog learns the lesson of, how do I control or eliminate this stimulation? Oh, I aggress the person right next to me, and that's how I make the e-collar turn off. What is the linkage with this situation? If you are climbing this mountain and you get to the peak, and instead of the dog shutting down and breaking contact and losing interest, if that dog reaches that point where they decide that they're going to turn that frustration towards the handler as the outlet, and they bite that handler, and the handler loses their grip, and then that dog gets loose and goes and bites a cooperative subject on a real-world deployment, or goes and grabs the decoy during a training scenario, that is now a dog who has seen a squirrel in the yard and has bounced against the glass storm door enough and accidentally hit the door latch and let itself out into the yard to go chase the squirrel. That is what we just had happen. If that dog learns that it can aggress the handler and get loose, and it may not even have to get all the way loose. If you're on a 6-foot line or a 15 or 30-foot line, and that dog aggresses you enough or gains enough ground that you feed line out to try to get the dog away from you, they're still gaining ground and getting closer to that item that they have built drive and frustration for than they were a minute ago. So this is how they start to repeat that behavior. Now that they have successfully seen the squirrel in the yard and they have defeated the storm door and learned how to work that latch and get out there with or without you to get what they want, that is now in there as a course of action. So if that dog either gains ground or goes and gains the suspect or our decoy during training by aggressing you because you got too close to the top and built too much frustration vis-a-vis drive, and now the only outlet was to turn that towards you, that is huge. That is a big failure. So we want to build a little bit of drive, but we need to understand keeping the dog focused on someone in a calm, vigilant manner is better than having the dog that's standing on its hind legs pulling. I go back to another video, this canine training needs to, or police dog training needs to stop now, and talk about the handler attacks, the push away, the re-attacks during pat down. Even if you have a cooperative subject, real world, and you've got a new dog that you're integrating, you still need that dog to have a calm, focused amount of drive. You don't have a tactical asset anymore if your dog is jumping and standing on its hind feet and flipping around in the leash. A quick sidebar that's not in my notes. One of the things that many trainers will do and that I sometimes use during training, and especially if you are selecting dogs at a vendor or if you're in Europe, is you might have the dog on a leash and you might tease them with a toy and throw it into a grassy area or some other area where they can't see it when it comes to rest. And you might let them look at it, and you might stir the pot, spin them a 360 with that leash to break eye contact with the exact spot where it left, and then let them go, to spur them into a little more of a nose-based hunt rather than just a line of sight run over there because that's the last place that I saw the toy land. Changing that back to our real world deployment, if our suspect is walking out there and your dog is so high up on the mountain peak that the drive and the frustration have this dog spinning and flipping and jumping around, they're breaking eye contact with the target. If during this moment something does change and the dynamics of the scenario change and you need to release your dog, if your dog is flipping and turning around in circles because they have too much frustration, every time they turn, and again, this whole video is about team dynamics and canine integration, if this dog is spinning and going around and around, they're tracking all of your security element, other assaulters, other people on the perimeter, and if in the worst case scenario you do need to line that dog up and send them on a canine deployment, they're going around in circles looking at all of these other people that aren't intended targets. So that is absolutely not something that you want to have happen. We want that calm, focused demeanor where the dog allows you to still be tactically aware, situationally aware, to use your radio, your weapon systems, and have him focused and ready to go at all times. So that's kind of the intro into this whole thing. Where do we go from there? Imprinting. We are going to imprint having multiple people, assaulters, operators, however you want to describe the situation, with the dog going interior to a building. Now, I'm going to say something that has been viewed controversially by many in the community for years now, and I do not budge. I will not back off because I am right, and I can prove that I am right. This is how you imprint your dog to the team environment in the most effective, manageable way possible. Do not start your building searches with a team, integrated with a team, or even without a team. Don't start your building searches for a man, for a decoy. If you go back and look at the tracking videos that I just put out, I talk about not concluding every track with a bite because that can set a very bad expectation, a mental precedent for your dog that you don't want it to have. Same thing as with integrating with a team, with operators for CQB, with an assault force, whatever we're going to call it. We don't want to have that dog already preloaded mentally that I'm going in here to bite somebody, and oh, by the way, I'm going to simultaneously try to teach you to be social and interact with a bunch of other moving bodies. So during an assault, whether it's military or law enforcement, if this is a direct action, fast moving, for the purposes of this video, we'll call it a no-knock warrant service or a hard knock warrant service. We're going to breach the door and make our way in, and we're going to fall back on speed and action, violence of action, and we're going to be flowing room to room, shouting lawful commands, using a lot of command presence, dominating the rooms with our voices, and communicating with each other in a clear and understandable manner, and going room to room in a pretty fast manner, perhaps flipping over furniture or riding doors down against the wall or pulling doors back. This is already a lot of prey movement and a lot of commotion and activity for the dog. If we start the imprintation process of this activity and we have already built drive and anticipation, if we've already given the dog the foreplay that there's a decoy in here in a suit or with bite equipment, this is going to make the dog becoming comfortable with and digesting the actions of all of your assault force that much more difficult. And it increases the likelihood that something is going to go wrong and that they're going to bite someone in the assault force. So these are the exact drills that I use in the exact order and have been wildly successful with them. So we're going to start out. We're going to use toys, and this is the controversial piece. We're going to use toys and not decoys. Whatever toy that your dog loves the best that you can get back from them and reset and recock and run this exercise again back to back to back, that is what you need to be using. If that's a tennis ball, a Kong, whatever it is. The other good thing about this is the amount of energy expended for the toy is much more economical than the decoy, especially if your dog has some kind of an outing issue or your outing isn't where you need it to be yet. If you're doing this for a decoy over and over and over, you're going to get a lot less reps out of this dog than what you would with just a toy. Before I diagram this, as you, the handler, are going to have to be the ambassador for this training, this is how you have to frame it. First of all, you're going to need bodies. You're going to need your assault force. You're going to need all of them, and you're going to need their undivided attention and max participation and enthusiasm. I'm going to show the whole thing to you right here in a second, but it's going to get bored and it's going to get a little bit repetitive and circular for the guys. Here's what you have to tell them when you sell this. If you want to do high-speed operations safely, reliably, effectively, you're going to get out of this what you put into it. So I'm going to need everybody to show up, positive mental attitude, 100% participation, ready to go in every single rep. And it's going to get a little mundane, but you have to stick with it, because if you lay the foundation and you get this done right the first time, it will pay off its dividends as you start to go operational and real world. So I have heard and slapped down a million times over, I don't want my dog going into a building search looking for a toy. I want him looking for a man, because we're high speed and we do man work. Your dog will find a man. And if your dog can't do building search toy reps and then come back in here, and it will pass up in this 50-year-old version, 225 or 28 pound dude wearing a 30-ish pound bite suit top and bottom, sweating his ass off, pumping scent into the air. If your dog can get so toy conditioned that it will go into this building, further into this exercise, and pass on a living, breathing scent heat source rather than looking for a small inanimate object, then you picked the wrong dog to begin with. And I have had, again, over a decade of experience now in soft MPC, and I have yet to have any of my dogs fail and pass on a man because they were looking for a toy. It's just a stupid argument from people who don't want to take the time to understand what I'm trying to explain to you. So with that being said, we are going to start with a building, and I'm going to try to draw big so that it shows up on camera. So this will be our breach, our exterior door. And we will say that this building is laid out like such. We have a large single room when we first go in here, and then we'll say a hallway and a center fed room right here on the left and a corner fed on the right with this hallway. Simple floor plan, 3 rooms. This is how we're going to imprint your dog on the team aspect of this. First thing we're going to do is, hopefully you've got a helper that can work with you a little bit. So I'm speaking to you, the dog handler, and that's how this video will be framed for this entire explanation is I'm speaking to you, the handler, and you will have all of your team guys out here stacked up along the wall going to this exterior door, kind of a la real world scenario like. And we're going to be up against the wall. I've got 5 guys there. I'm going to step behind the camera and take a look real quick. All right. I mean, this shows up on this little screen pretty well. I think we're going to be in decent shape if you watch this on a computer or on a TV. So with that being said, the trainer or helper will be right here in front of an open breech. I'm trying to make sure I cover every possible detail as we start this off because I don't want you to miss anything. And our dog is going to be back here at the end of the stack with you, the handler. Put tail on him. We got a handler back here. He's very happy integrating with the team. So the first thing that we're going to do to begin this process is we are going to have the handler post up with the dog. And it doesn't have to be a trainer because you're going to know the system after this. You can just have a helper, an extra guy, anybody. They're going to tease with the toy. Don't overdo it. Again, we don't need the dog up in the stratosphere mentally with so much drive and frustration built for this. We need to get reps and show them a picture. So here's my toy. I'm going to step out. We're along the wall with our assault force. I'm going to step out clear of the door where the dog can see me. This is probably going to be 3 to 5 feet outside the door. The dog team is going to step out of line from the rest of the assault force so that you are line of sight along the legs of all of the guys, maybe a foot beyond the outside of their legs, so that you can clearly see the helper, but also you're passing all of the assault force and they're in the dog's peripheral vision. Your helper is going to, hey, woohoo, looky here, buddy. And as soon as the dog goes into drive and is out there nice and snug on the end of that leash or your release lanyard or whatever system you're using, as soon as they see that, I'm going to toss the ball into the middle of this room. I'm not hucking it to the end of the hallway. Don't throw it to the back of the building. Pitch it out here into the middle of the room. Why are these things important? All of this matters. None of this is just me pulling it out of my beezer and feeding it to you. This is all for a purpose. Have your helper try to throw the ball somewhere out here in the middle or out here in this lead hallway in the imaginary floor plan that we've got here. Don't throw it right here for now because we are getting ready to send the dog and have him flow past all of our guys, and then the guys are going to move and go into the room behind the dog. And if the dog picks up the toy because it's laying right here 3 feet inside of the door, and we already trample the dog or have some kind of misstep or confusion from the get-go, we're already screwed up. So the ball needs to land out here well into the middle of the first room or into the hallway so that the dog goes into the building and doesn't hang up right here and chub the stack while they're trying to flow in there and already set themselves up for a snap bite from a dog before we've even got this thing off the ground. So we let the dog go on rep number 1. Oop, dropped my eraser. Repetition number 1. Helper teases, tosses ball into middle of room. As soon as that ball goes into the room, helper, don't even walk away. You're going to add prey and have a moving target away from the doorway that you don't need. Again, this is all about imprinting and neutralizing people to your dog and your dog to your assault force. Maybe you've got far side of the door security. Maybe this is the breacher and he's still over here. Breachers will often come back here into the stack. They'll be second or third man down when they clack off. and hit the breaching charge. But there's nothing wrong with having another guy standing right here. Again, this subject is so deep and so broad. Everybody, be in your game day clothing. Be in your proper uniform. Whatever you will be serving these high-risk warrants in or conducting these raids in, wear that. Wear that from day one, from rep one, and wear it every single time. We're going to get into that as we go on, but let's just go ahead and set the stage now. We want everybody, including the handler, to be in their game day attire, and the more you all match, the better it is, and we'll talk about that. So, helper teases, helper throws, dog sees, handler releases dog, dog flows past stack. As soon as the dog's butt disappears through the threshold of the doorway, your assault force is now going to flow into the room. And at first, we're going to flow in at about half speed to let the dog know, because the dog may be in there searching around. By the way, everything matters. Don't start this in an abandoned building with no electricity and this first room is dark. We'll get you there. Don't start in the dark. Start in a building that either has plenty of windows and natural light, or it still has electricity and lights in it. Let the dog see you. Let the dog know what's going on. Acclimate them to what is going to take place. Don't go jump into the deep end of the pool and throw a toy into a blacked out building and then everybody flow in behind them. Save yourself the heartache. So everyone flows into the room at about half speed. The dog picks up the toy and he's running around. We may secure this room and then maybe move halfway into the hallway. We don't need to do the whole building yet, but we need to flow into the room with the dog and go just beyond the dog. We're going to observe the dog's behavior. He's probably already picked up the toy by the point that the guys are making their way into the building, so he's already got an oral fixation, just like we talked about in the gunfire video. The dog's already got something in there to satisfy that drive and that desire to bite. He's got something to release that energy into. So as people flow in, he's walking around chewing the toy, and oh wow, guys are all moving around in here. And he may even take your cue and follow some down the hallway because, oh, where are those dudes going? I'm going to go check it out. So we will do, I don't want the whiteboard to turn too far away from the camera. We're going to do 2 to 3 reps of exactly this. Now, after the first rep, we're going to use what we need to use, and this is in all dog training, and then we are going to abandon those crutches as quickly as we need to. We'll use them as much as we have to, but no more than absolutely necessary. So with that being said, just like with the tracking, where I will put food down to start them on tracking, as soon as I see the food is not really necessary anymore, then the food's coming out. That's going to go away. So with that being said, we started with our helper doing a little bit of toy tease on the first couple. The dog just had a successful rep of following into this first room for the toy and picking that toy up, and no one got bit or otherwise messed with by the dog in this first rep. So now we can take the toy tease out of it. We go back out, we completely recock everything the same as the first rep. I might show the dog one time, whoop, up in the air, and then into the room. He knows where the door's at. I'm going to try to throw it maybe a little deeper into this first room or a little closer to the throat of the hallway where it leads down deeper into the building. But I'm going to start pushing the dog in there just a little bit more. By the third rep, we're going to come out and recock, and without any fanfare, I'm just going to throw the toy in there, and we're going to let the dog go. And in the second and third reps, if everything is going well with your dog, you're going to start picking up the speed and tempo with your guys in here. By the third rep, we need to start adding lawful commands as per SOP with whatever organization you're with, and you're going to start using normal communication leading up to the command presence and volume in which you would do them real world. So guys coming in, short room, hallway, door right, door left, all of your normal internal communications for the team as you go, we're going to start bringing these things in, because now we're escalating the amount of stress input to the dog. When we start flowing into this room, we're going to start giving them the picture of, oh, well, you know, these are the same dudes I was outside with and it was all cool. And so now they're a little bit loud and they're doing things and they're noisy, but it's still cool. It's the same guys that I've been doing this with all morning long. Now, once we have flowed in through here a couple of times on these drills, now we're going to set up a couple of other integration drills to give the dog and your assault force a different look and give them confidence. Remember, we aren't just at this point, and I'm talking to you, the handler, we aren't just showing the dog the flow of this and the expectation and imprinting them on what happens during this. We are also, do not ever forget, you are building confidence with your assault force, with the guys you are working with. So we have to do things not only to show the dog what we expect of them, but to also establish bona fides and reliability and gain that kind of trust and credibility with your assault force, with your operators that they're going to need. So again, we're working two-dimensionally here. I'm going to bring the assault force up here to the front of the doorway, and I'm going to stack them in a straight line, get them dead in line with the doorway, and a long extended arm forward, touch the shoulder of the guy in front of you. So that's going to be your spacing interval. And you're going to line up your entire assault force in a straight row, and they are going to be an extended arm's length apart, and the dog is going to be downed right back here at the bottom of the stack, and we are all going to stand a wide shoulder width stance so that the dog is looking through a set of lined up wickets with everybody's legs, and we are going to pre-plant the toy with our helper is going to come in here and put the toy in, and then he's just going to step out and get out of the way, but the dog is going to know that the toy is in there. Again, we've just done 3 or 4 reps already where we showed the dog the toy going in there, and then they went in and found it. Now at the back of the stack, you're going to release the dog and you're going to let him go right down Main Street through everybody's crotch, right between their straddles, and go all the way into this building. Now, this is not a tactical formation. We are not showing the dog something we are going to use real world. At this point, I am trying to build confidence with the assault force and reliability with our dogs. So we've got all their legs down there, and the dog is in a down stay back here with a clear view to the doorway through everybody's straddle, and we're going to send the dog right through everybody's legs, right into the building, and let him go in here and search for his toy. As the dog clears the number 1 man and goes in, everybody is also still going to flow into the room, probably at this point 1/2 to 3/4 speed, and we're going to be using again those lawful commands and internal communications as you would move throughout the building. Once you get 2 reps of this, now we're going to do offset wickets. So you're going to line up the number 1 man a 1/2 step off center of the doorway. Your number 2 man is going to be a 1/2 step to the other side. Number 3 man, a 1/2 step to the other side. Number 4 man. So what are we actually doing right here? Now we're going to have that wide straddle, But because everyone in alternating fashion is a half step off of each other, now there's no longer going to be a clear line of sight to the doorway in this first room. Is this real world? No, it's not. What are we doing? We're building confidence with the assaulters, and we are preparing the dog for the worst case scenario of the dog becoming behind the assault, behind the flow, and trying to move through this floor plan and look for something, to be on search and not be reactive to people's legs, to not do snap bites to get people out of the way, but for this dog to find its way through people's legs and continue into the floor plan. So, with every one straddle being interlaced, where there's a series of wickets, almost a serpentine of legs going to the doorway, there's still some daylight there and there is a way through, but we want that dog to be released back here. We're going to again pre-plant the toy, because at this point we're going to start moving away from anything with a helper. The helper is going to go in there and plant it for you to be expedient, but the helper still needs to plant where you want it to go, because there is going to be an absolute method to the madness here. This ties into aid placement and what it means to your dog, a past video. But now this helper is going to be putting your toy in here in different locations. But you are going to send the dog from the back of the pack, and he's going to do the weaver through all of these wickets. Once he's into the floor plan, everybody flows in with him. Now, we're getting close. We're extending what we're doing with the dog and with our guys. This is going to be one of our last warm-up exercises that you can do with your dog before we start stepping up the tactical aspect of this. So with all of your assault force outside, we're going to line everybody back up along the wall. The dog's already seen this picture. The dog knows where the door is. We're working with the same building. Dog is back here at the back with you, the handler. From here, we are going to do a pre-plant with the toy, and then we are going to 3, 2, 1, execute, 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 and everyone is going to flow into this building while you release the dog. So, real world scenario, the dog is going to go first. Number one man follows the tail of the dog as he goes through the doorway and goes interior on the building. Why are we sending the dog from the back of the stack after number one man is already in motion? Because we are building confidence in your assault force and showing the dog the worst possible scenario. And because we've been playing toy all morning and not putting a live decoy in a suit in here or other protective equipment, the dog's mindset, their outlook is much more manageable. And now we are showing them go in here for a prey item, an inanimate prey object, and execute a search pattern, but don't bite anybody that's involved in this stack. And now we're putting the stack in motion, so now they are effectively prey items. We are trying to bomb-proof your dog to the worst possible case scenario. Either something goes wrong at the breach and the dog gets tangled up in the stack, or for some reason there's a hang up in the first room and the dog gets behind the assault force as it's flowing, and the dog finds its way back through the assault to the tip of the spear back out front as you're moving deeper into the floor plan. But this is another way to show the dog a picture and to build confidence with your teammates that he's not going to bite you. So we pre-plant the toy. We tell him 3, 2, 1, execute. This guy goes in motion. Once the stack starts, handler, you release the dog and allow the dog to go around the stack and into the doorway. You flow in behind them. Everybody's at half to 3/4 speed. Dog gets the toy. We take the toy away from the dog, pre-plant, and we come back outside. So as far as your aid placement goes, and this is another aspect to what I do that gives me great pleasure to argue with other people who are naysayers about this particular method. Looking all around, and I don't have a dog toy handy out here with me, which is odd, unusual. Let's say that this dry eraser is your dog toy. Any Kong, any tennis ball has an odor associated with it. Your dog will hunt for it. It will find it. We've already assessed and selected our dog. We've done throws into high grass, into unmowed areas. We know that when you do a long throw and the toy bounces and is out of view of the dog, they go to nose and they bracket back and forth, and we direct them into it and they find it. When you have something this small that is an inanimate, non-heat source odor, and you go in and you plant this thing in the far corner of the first room, in the near corner of the first room, at the doorway threshold, at, let's suppose, as drawn, there's a little bit of a blind corner for some reason. You had an odd builder who has an inset hallway right here in a blind corner. You put that toy right there in that blind corner. These things require, for the dog to find them, these placements require the dog to go deep into the corner, to use their nose, and to have a thorough search pattern in order to achieve success. When you start using proper aid placement to teach your dog a pattern, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, back to 2, back to 6, back to 4, back to 1, show your dog how to run these points. And every building is going to be different. Every floor plan will be unique. But if you always keep the threshold relevant in the dog's mind by putting a toy right here at the beginning, putting a toy deep in this first corner where number one man is going to go upon entry into the room. So once you put a man in here, or bad guys, and you have a 165-pound or above person in this building who is a living heat source and a scent generator, we all know that it's going to fill rooms and start moving throughout the floor plan. It's going to be a much easier find for the dog. If we teach the dog that they have to be so precise and accurate as to go to each corner and check, and also as we get deeper into this process, when we've got interior doors that open inward into these follow-on rooms in the floor plan, start going in here and hiding toys behind these doorways. Teach that dog to check that hinge on the doorway as they go in upon entry to make sure that they are clearing these doorways as they go into a room. If you train your dog, if you imprint these integrated building searches or even solo building searches with this method, and your toy is always bouncing around, alternating, bing, 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 this dog will learn to be so thorough and go to each corner, because this small inanimate object requires them to get very, very close to it in order to locate it, because it doesn't give off heat or a ton of odor. It is going to make your building search for man a downhill run for this dog. Once you go live with this, and we will do some decoy reps, just not yet. But once you put a decoy in here, and now they are going from this tiny, small, inanimate object to a person, now it is a downhill ice skating event for your dog, because they have learned the pattern of how to work a room. They have dialed their nose down to be paying attention for a small object, rather than the easier full-size human being heat source scent generator being in this building. And now this dog will ping throughout here. I'm going to jump ahead just a second. I told you we'll do some decoy reps, and we will. If anyone is a naysayer about this, you can prove me right on your own. Imprint your dog the way I'm showing you, and then you go in here and you put tennis balls in 3 corners of the first room, and you put a decoy in a suit right here, and make it a semi-dark room. Put him behind a love seat or a piece of furniture, but have that guy in there cooking for a bit and let a little bit of scent get going in this building, and you release that dog into that building. I will bet a paycheck on it right now. Your dog is going to go in there and grab this dude. That is how you proof yourself. Show your teammates we're not wasting time or teaching the dog the wrong thing with the tennis balls. I will do a video with any of my day job dogs right now, and there's not a dog in there that will pass up a decoy, a live man on the hoof to pick up a tennis ball or a Kong in this room. It just won't happen. If you have picked a decent dog and done a little bit of decent training for man and bite work outside of this exercise up to this point, it will not happen. You are not going to have a problem. So, why are we putting them behind the doorways, the toys? Because we want the dog to understand the productive areas. Go back and look at aid placement and what it means to your dog. We want to show them all of the areas in this floor plan that can be productive. So, next thing we're going to do for you, the handler, that does not require the team, is we're going to do what's called the CQB exercise. Now, once you start taking this thing live and we're moving into decoy reps and real world scenarios, what are we going to do? I don't want to jump too far outside of my notes here. I did have this one, so we'll try to go in order with my notes because I want it to make sense and be chronological. An additional exercise that you are going to train on your own, handler, during your training days and during downtimes and water breaks for the guys, you're going to come in here into this floor plan and you're going to put your dog in a down stay. You can start outside the doorway, put your dog in a down stay. You, the handler, I know I get close to out of frame on this side of the whiteboard, so we're going to pretend the edge of my chair is the threshold to a doorway. You're going to put your dog in a down stay and you're going to show him a toy, and you're going to do a motion just like this, and you're going to flick it and throw that toy into the room, and you're going to send your dog apport, retrieve, go find it, whatever you want to say, and you're going to pitch that toy into a room. Now, as you pitch the toy, and we'll stick with our floor plan as drawn, once you flick that toy into this room and the dog goes in and picks it up, take the toy, put him in a down stay here, walk into the hallway and set yourself up right here on the far side of the door so you're looking back down the hallway facing the dog. And you're going to do the same thing again. You're going to show your hand just like this, and you're going to flick that toy right into this room, and you're going to send the dog to go in here and pick it up. Once you take the toy back, you can put your dog in a down stay at this doorway, move over here to this doorway, and again, this isn't about tactics right now. We're showing the dog something. Put your back against the wall facing the dog, and you're going to do a hey and flick your hand and throw the toy into this room and let him go retrieve it. What are we doing and what are we setting up for? Once your dog is fully integrated into this assault, everyone is going to be in here free flowing through this building plan. Depending on your SOPs, for CQB or building takedowns or whatever it is that you do at your organization, you, the handler, may find yourself pulling security or being responsible for a red zone or locking down a hallway or holding a position, and you may not necessarily be where your dog is at. This is one of the strategies that we are going to build into your dog to assist other members of the assault force. As you throw the toy, now you're going to set yourself up by go put your dog back in the vehicle, lock it up a second, and have your dump pouch at the ready. Take 3 or 4 toys. Go in here and put a toy in the first room at position 1. So now what we're doing is we're having the toy with you when you throw it out of it. So we've got pre-planted positions at different areas in all 3 of these rooms and maybe the hallway, but you're going to make eye contact with your dog in a down stay. You're going to call him here, and as he's on approach, you're going to simulate the exact same hand motion that you used to throw the toy into that room, to not throw a toy, but to simulate throwing it and having the toy already pre-planted in there so that the dog goes into the room and goes on search and finds it. As soon as he finds it, oh good boy, take it away, put that one in your dump pouch, put the dog in the down stay, call him toward you and do a same throwing motion into another preloaded room. Rinse and repeat. Take the toy, down stay, get in front of another preloaded room. Buddy, here on approach, boom, hand gesture into a preloaded room. What are we doing? We are giving other assaulters the ability to take the dog's mind and focus off of them and give them something productive to do. If during the assault, this floor plan is not a great illustration for what I'm about to explain, but stick with me. If you get tasked with locking something down or you have to hold position and you're not with the dog and you have assaulters in this hallway and they see the dog coming and he's pretty juiced, all that assaulter needs is a doorway for them to look at your dog, say your dog's name, and you, the handler, teach them the exact hand motion that you want them to use. And it is so simple. This is what it looks like. I'm at the doorway. I've got the doorway locked down. I see the dog coming. I can, with either hand, depending on which side of the door that I am on, I see that dog coming. Hey, buddy, take that spare hand because my sling will be around me, not in the way. I can go low ready. Hey, buddy, boop, and do one of those and send that dog to go do something productive. And then me and my next man are right on me, and we're going into that room following the dog. But that is exactly what that is for you to start building an exercise that allows your teammates some kind of an option when that dog is focused on them and they are either at a doorway they need him to go into, or they think that he's running at me and he looks just a little more intense than he should. This gives them an option to be able to simulate something that you have taught that dog to get him to go into the room and go back on task searching. So this is one of your options that both enhance the flow in the target building and gives other assaulters that are not you, that are not the handler, one of the tools to be able to control and use and change that dog's mental focus from maybe an impure thought back to the work at hand. So, training reps with a decoy. We do want to do training reps with a decoy. By the time you are ready to integrate a decoy and protective equipment, you better be here with your assault force, and you better be able to let that dog go and have him flow into this building and pass everyone and everyone be comfortable with that dog before we ever bring a decoy into the mix. Now, we need to talk about actions on target by the assault force. So during all of our toy reps, the most important thing that your assault force can do, both on their behalf and on the behalf of the dog, is to largely ignore the dog. That is going to be very tough. It's going to be tough at first, so you're going to have these peaks and valleys. At first, it's going to be tough because if it's a new dog or this is a new asset that you're integrating at your organization, everybody's going to be curious and interested, and let's be honest, a little bit nervous and apprehensive about what this dog is going to do when we all go in here. So everybody is going to go into this building, and instead of flowing and holding security like they're supposed to, everybody's going to be kind of walking around looking at the dog and not conducting CQB per your organization's SOP or as thoroughly as they should. What we are going for during the training reps with the toy is number one man goes in there, picks the direction they're going into the room, and they are boom into that deep corner, and they are driving on that corner, and that dog is doing its own thing. The only recognition that assaulters should be giving that dog is having the blinders off, seeing the entire room, and just realizing that, yes, that is the dog and he's moving around. But my focus is through the doorway, into that corner, next corner, doorway, collapsing down, intersecting fields of fire with my number two man, and awareness if I have a number three man collapsing down in the middle of the room. Where is he at? What's my limit of advance in this room, and what do we do next? And the dog is just a peripheral vision piece of situational awareness that's going on. It's not something to track visually, to worry about. We want your assault force to have enough confidence for them to walk around and handle their weapons and go to security threats, furniture, closets, closed doorways, hallways, dark areas, and have 100% attention paid to that and not be worrying, oh, I got to keep an eye on the dog because I might get bit in the hamstring or the calf. So this is a very important piece to start with, is desensitizing your assault force to the actions of the dog, doing it during the toy reps. Because other than I'm a little nervous and this dog thing is new and I don't know your dog yet, other than the attention they would pay to the dog at first, the toy retrieval gets pretty boring to your assault force pretty quick. And they will assimilate the dog being part of the actions pretty quickly when they're just picking up a toy. Once we put a decoy in here dressed out in protective equipment, for some guys in your assault force, now we're going to be dropping back a couple of steps, because now, depending on how much they've worked with the dog previously, seeing the dog go in here and energetically shithouse a decoy in protective equipment is going to be much more interesting to your assault force than them picking up the tennis ball. And now there's going to be this valley where, oh my gosh, now we're back down here. We hit a peak with them going in for the toy retrieve, and the guys were pretty much just keeping the dog part of their situational awareness but not paying attention to it. And now we're back to, oh my gosh, we're tunnel visioned on the dog because he's over here grabbing this dude and thrashing him, and this is very interesting. So with that being said, once we integrate that, we have to reinforce with the guys. This is the exact same thing as with the toy. The only thing we need to worry about now is your SOP as it pertains to the CQB, about whose responsibility that the person being bit by the dog belongs to, and how that shakes out as far as your assault force. And at some point, if you are doing very high level operations and you feel like gunfire inside this building is a real possibility, you may want to integrate certainly blank fire, and potentially for some organizations, if it's allowed, if you can do it, live fire in a 360 shoot house with your dog and your decoy. With that being said, there are several important factors here that we must address. I have given this explanation many, many times before and had people look at me as if I was from Mars, and also the people on Mars have a penis growing from their forehead. Just look at me with utter confusion of a house cat. When we do gunfire, if you go back and you look at my hard truth about gunfire videos and doing it, we want a dog to be, by definition, gunfire neutral is the best option that you can have for a dog, the best outcome. A dog that does not run to nor away from gunfire. Gunfire is just a thing that's going on, but in my management video, I'm also telling you that they need productive tasks to engage in for your maximum mitigation of gunfire and their response to it. With that being said, your next step, once you start your decoy integration and you move away from the reps with toys, and you can always go back to reps with toys. There is nothing wrong with integrating your dog and having toy reps more frequently than you have decoy reps, but you're going to want to get decoy reps in there at some point. Why? Because you and your team have to assign responsibilities for taking the dog off and putting this person under control, cuffing, searching, either holding that person where they are until the assault is complete or removing them from the building mid-assault. Whatever your SOPs call for, that's up to you. But you're going to have to figure out what this looks like with when people go in here and your dog does come into contact with someone and bite them. Are we stopping and holding security here? Does the assault stop in this room while we deal with the dog? Does the assault continue and the dog is on his own? All of these are valid courses of action. You got to figure out which one you're going to engage in at your organization and what the responsibilities in the assault force look like accordingly. So with that being said, you do need to do some decoy reps. So we're going to have our bad guy for this one in room number 1, for example. And we are going to talk about integrating our blank fire. So with an eye on gun neutral, and a dog should neither run to nor away from gunfire, we're going to breach the door. We're going to send the dog, and we're going to talk about orders here in a minute. We're going to talk about order in the stack. Don't get all panties in a twist on me. We're going to breach. We're going to send the dog. Our assault force is going to flow into the room. Because we have a bad guy, and hold on, there's more explanation coming. Because we're going to have a bad guy in the first room, we're going to pop a couple of blank caps, minimum of 2, maximum of 6 in this first room. And then the assault force is going to continue to flow into the building, and they're going to go into adjacent rooms, and we're going to have gunfire in adjacent rooms, a minimum of 2 shots, a maximum of 6. We don't need a Civil War volley in the building while we are integrating and getting our dog used to this. It's just not necessary. So, what does it mean to the dog, and why am I giving you the exact prescription here? Because that's a bad guy. Presumably, he might have been armed. Presumably, other people could be in this room. We want the dog to be proofed to neither run to nor away from gunfire. So we are going to shoot in the room with our decoy with the dog on bite to make sure that the dog does not break contact from our bad guy. This will simulate our suspect down in the first room and any additional bad guys in the first room. So our 2 to 6 rounds will cover shooting our bad guy and anyone in there with him. Then we will have 2 to 6 rounds of blank fire in the additional rooms. This will simulate assaulters in contact with other bad guys beyond the dog, because we also don't want the dog, if our guy on the floor, if this takedown is still alive and a potential threat, we do not want the dog target shopping and leaving that decoy and running down the hallway into the floor plan because the dog heard gunfire and says, oh, hey, I need to run in there and see what's going on. This is a lot of tendrils here to tie together, but I'm going to do it for you. So with that being said, we have gunfire where he's at and gunfire beyond where he's at. Then we will move the decoy deeper into the room. We will flow in. We'll go behind the dog. Once the dog is on bite and we have assaulters flow into this room, we will have 2 to 6 rounds in here. This part's a little bit canned. Once we have the 2 to 6 rounds fired in here, our assault element in this room will do 2 to 6 rounds. Again, just to put gunfire out there after the dog is on bite, just to make sure they're neither running to nor away from. This is all, it's important. It's going to make sense, I promise you. Now, if we start doing live fire, if you have an organization and a facility capable of doing live ammunition gunfire in a 360 shoot house and you want to incorporate the dog, this is insanely important. This is the part where I have been looked at as though I was born and raised on Mars with a penis growing from my forehead. Dogs do not understand paper 2D targets. Hold on a second. Let me walk across the shop here. Obviously, this is a 1-inch gridded rifle sight-in target. It's 2-dimensional. There is no 3-dimensional quality here. You go into any room of this building and you staple that to the wall, it's just a piece of paper on the wall. Even though there are all kinds of targets and even the realistic printout targets of a human torso from the waist up, some holding a weapon or a threat, some holding a hostage, some of them in the surrender position. Your nicest color print off shoot paper targets mean nothing to a dog. Zero, zilch, nothing. Stick with me. There is a well-known saying that was coined by a well-known assaulter from a well-known place, and he calls it the land of the flat people. And that is frequently repeated by my buddy, Dutch Chris Moyer. He and I have long interactions way back to his active duty days and then beyond. And if you want to go get some quality training from a great dude, check out the Sawmill in South Carolina and go over there and train with Moyer. But he often repeats in training that we have done together and that he does individually, the land of the flat people, which means the paper targets on the wall and how things are different when you are shooting paper targets on the wall. So when we cock this, and the thing that I have railed against for years that some people understand and others just refuse to wrap their mind around it, that when you go in here with your assault force and you're doing a live fire integration, or even if you're shooting blanks at a target that's been cocked with paper targets with the color torsos on them, it doesn't mean shit to your dog. So when, and again, by every organization, I mean every organization. When your assault force flows in here to do live fire CQB training, what's everybody want to do? They want to get their trigger time in. I want to make sure that everybody in here, because we're going to go and we're going to critique their flow in the room, we're going to go and we're going to grade targets and we're going to check for shot placement and the number of rounds fired. And then we're going to ask people, how many rounds did you fire? Which targets did you fire at? Are you sure? All of these things. But when the dog is in the mix, if we go in here and we want to get our shoot on, which in this scenario, most of these guys and organizations do, they're going to put a 2D shoot target here, maybe one there, maybe one right there at the corner of the hallway before they go down it, probably one back here at the end of the long hallway, They might put one back here on this X where we were doing our toy searches for the dog behind the door. So we were teaching our dog to check hinges on open doorways for this scenario if there's a person behind there. In CQB, if you find yourself at this room and you're the number one man, whether or not you choose to go left or you go straight, you go right and take the right side of this room and it's the direction the door opens, a fundamental of CQB is called riding the door down. That means as you go in, you take the door with your shoulder and your body and you ride it all the way up against the wall and make it hit the wall. We do this to make sure that there's not a body back there. If you know what a person would feel like behind a door, if you put your shoulder on it and you force your way in there and you feel it stop and has some sponginess to it, there is probably somebody behind that doorway, and that is a big effing problem. So that's why we ride the doorway down. Oftentimes at high-level organizations, they will post a 2D Land of the Flat People paper target behind this doorway just to prove that you still need to look behind the doorway. If you go into this room and this side of the room is your responsibility, whether you're number one or number two, by the time you ride that door down, see this corner and then turn and look at that corner, by the time this man is in here and perhaps a third and they're collapsing on this corner of the room, you need to pull that door back open and double, triple check behind it, even if it rode all the way to the wall. And one of the things they'll do is they will put a bad guy target, a Land of the Flat People target behind there that is a shoot target to make sure that you opened it and found it. Not relying on, yeah, it opened all the way to the wall, there's not a threat behind there. So with that being said, if we're doing a live shoot house, man, they're going to probably put at least 2, sometimes 3 targets in every room, maybe one behind the door. And what's going to happen? Let's modify our floor plan just a little bit to make the point. We'll take this flat target out of the hallway and we're going to say this is a tiny room, if not a closet, on the back of this hallway. We'll have our door, double door right there. So we're going to put our decoy in this closet. We're going to go breech bang dog, and we'll talk about that exact procedure here in a minute. It's in the notes. We're going to go breech bang dog, and we're going to send the dog who goes in here first, and the dog may do a nice search, especially if we did a good job with our toy placement and our early imprintation of this task. This dog may roll in here and do a nice corner to corner of this room and be all the way down the hallway. Why is he all the way down the hallway? Because he already ran a solid pattern deep into every corner, went corner to corner in this room and left because there's nobody in here. And we're doing a decoy hit, not toys, so there are no toys in here. Dog's going down the hallway. This is a live fire hit, and we're in the land of the flat people, and there's 3 flat people in this first room. We get 1, 2, 3 assaulters into this room. What are they doing? They are neutralizing the 3 paper targets that are in this room. The dog hears the gunfire, and again, we don't want them to run to or away from gunfire, but he may be back here, nothing's going on, and then he says, oh, wait, gunfire? Makes a U-turn and comes back into the room. There's smoke in here and dudes standing around moving and yelling, but there's no bad guys. There's only the cool guys that I've been working with up to this point. Wow, that's weird. Then the assault force continues and the flow goes into this room. Let's pretend for a minute that our dog made it into this room over here and the assault has made it into this room, and now we've got the land of the 2D people over here. Change that. Let's go ahead and jump ahead because I know this video is going long. I'm not possibly going to be able to cover everything, but I want to make it thorough. Let's say the dog has flowed into this room. So I'll make a diagram here. Dog. Whoop. Doggy. And all of our assaulters are in this room. The dog is in here, and the assaulters found paper people in here and shot them all. And the dog did not leave the room and come find them, but the dog is in this room, and there are also 3 paper targets in this room. Now, 2 to 3 assaulters flood this room, and the dog's running around in this room going corner to corner doing a nice pattern. Oh, hey guys, what are you doing in here? And then immediately over the dog's head, these guys come in here and fire up the walls with live ammo in this room. The dog cannot reconcile what just happened. Why did all of these dudes flow into this room and 2 to 3 of them start shooting live rounds into the walls of this room? There's nobody in here. They are just shooting the walls. Now, even a well-trained gun-neutral dog up to this point is going to start building frustration and a lack of understanding because they cannot reconcile this situation. So, this whole assault plays out. We kill all of the dead paper people. Then we come to the hallway with our decoy in it, with this closet, and that's the only thing that's in here is the decoy. We line up assaulters, and then we canned training, come up here and yank the closet door open and let the dog jump in there and bite the dude in the suit. This is so canned and so crap. I don't have enough time to sit here and soapbox about how wrong this is. You have killed all of the training you put into your dog for any kind of a pattern or a building search. Everybody, because we're going to go back to a concept that I talked about earlier with team assignments and responsibility assignments for cuffing and putting people under control, because everybody in this whole line of dudes all wants to go in here and get their shoot on and kill a target. Do they want the decoy in the bite suit for the dog right here at the doorway in the first room as a no-shoot target? No, they don't. Because everybody wants to flow and go high speed and go room to room and get their shoot on, which is fine. Nobody wants to be the guys who get stuck doing searching and cuffing and putting people under control and holding on to this guy as the rest of the assault force gets to breeze on by and go get their shoot on. So everybody, and even at the good organizations, stick a dude in an obscure hole in the back of the target so nobody gets pulled off of the assault to have to do searching and cuffing and putting somebody under control and restraining them. Everybody gets to flow and get their shoot on, and we prioritize the CQB and the team internal communication moving room to room of the assaulters. And now, because we wanted to integrate the dog and we want this as part of, our package, now it's at the back of the bus because nobody wants to stop and deal with the dog. So now we have killed all of the effective area search, room search, building search patterning that we have put into this dog going up to this point to relegate it to being just one guy back here in the back. And oh, by the way, not only is it the last thing that we do, nobody flows in there with the dog because everybody knows that the decoy's in there and it's a small room and we're just going to yank the dog open and let him have his bite at the very end. Please tell me that you see how absurd this is. And let me break it down to you as far as mental balance and fairness go to the dog. So, let me get my eraser. It's in the other hand. Lost it. Let's go back in time. Take all of this back out. And I shifted the easel again. Let's take all of this out and reset. And let's talk about real world terms. Because even every time that I have given this exact brief and had people look at me as if I were an alien, these same people, by the way, are the first ones to say realistic training, train as you fight, make it all real. Realism is better. You know, all the tropes and bumper stickers as far as training goes and being real world. So any 2D paper target that you put in this building, anywhere, if you are doing this correctly, should have a real life decoy in there and even if you have a room with 2 or more paper targets, you still have to have at least one decoy dressed out in protective equipment. Why? So if we're talking about a gun neutral dog that we already have to a good, reliable stage of neutral behavior, and we don't do this, our dogs are going to hit that wrong path and act out in an aggressive act of frustration at some point. It may not be right away. You may get away with it for a while, but you won't get away with it forever. Why? Let's talk about what this looks like in real world terms to the dog. If you have paper targets in here in the first room and your dog goes into the room ahead of you, there is already a bad guy in there that they are looking for, that they can go ahead and bite and release this energy, this drive, this frustration into prior to your arrival. And you might arrive and shoot in that room, killing associates of the bad guy that the dog is biting. Or it may even be necessary to shoot the person that the dog is biting because they are still a threat and the dog has bought you valuable time to come in and neutralize that threat. This reconciles in the dog's head why you would be shooting in this room, and there is something in there for this dog to take that frustration out on. If assaulters flow into a room ahead of this dog and there is a paper target and a decoy in there, if they go in there and the dog isn't biting someone else and they shoot the paper target and the dog does run to the gunfire, there is a decoy in there for the dog to bite. Why should there be a decoy in there? You're saying, oh, Chris, you've told us in prior videos, don't associate and directly link gunfire and biting. You are correct, and that is right. But if we are talking about CQB and seeing the world the way the dog does, if you come in here into this room and the dog is not otherwise engaged with anything and they do hear the gunfire and the shouting of lawful commands and they flow into this room and find you shooting, if we were in real terms, real world scenario terms, and you came in here and you shot this 2D paper target, what is that? That is a real world threat, an actual honest to goodness person that you just shot and fell to the ground. If that is a person who just got shot and fell to the ground and may even be screaming and on the ground bleeding, if they were a threat for lethal force and you shot them and the dog runs in there, is that a target that the dog is allowed to bite? Yes, it is, because if the dog went in there ahead of you, it was a lawful target for them to bite. If it was a lawful shoot for you to take out a threat using lethal force, it is a good target for your less lethal option to come in there and bite and release that frustration on if they have hit the floor and they're screaming. So, if your dog runs to the sound of gunfire, you are shooting at bad guys, and there should be bad guys in here and someone for the dog to bite. If the dog is on the bite and you run into the room and shoot, it is still also feasible for you to be in the room shooting associates of said bad guy or neutralizing the still remaining threat of the bad guy that your dog is on. If you really want to do quality, effective training that paints a real world scenario, train as you fight, show the dog the real world terms of what you're doing. If you're doing live fire or advanced blank work, every single room that has a paper target in it needs to have a live decoy in there for the dog to bite. It may be tough for safety reasons for your organization to do live fire Again, I have been with every organization, and one that I will name specifically is prior to an Iraq deployment, I personally have done exactly this and been the guy in the bite suit with 7th Group SIF Company. Well, they don't call them SIF companies anymore because of rebranding. But Charlie 37, I have been doing train-ups with our dog teams from 7th Group at Fort Bragg in live fire 360 shoot houses while they come in and shoot paper targets with me in the room for dogs to be able to get that bite, because I would either be the guy they're shooting before the dog got there or the guy that's being shot after the dog was already in there biting them. I have absolutely done this, and it can be done, and it can be done safely when you're working with a professional assault force and you communicate all of the risks and you go through all of the mitigation that you need to do to be able to pull this thing off. And that is how you should be doing it if you want it to be in real world terms. So you cannot have this massive disparate number of land of the flat people targets for everybody to go in here and get their shoot on with one secluded off to the side live decoy at the back of this building. That is just not how you do it long term. So as far as your live deployment reps, assault force needs verbal ID. Ever since I've been doing this, and I'm not going to talk about the actual terminology because it's not relevant to the topic at hand, there is a word that is used that we start orienting the dog to from day one with our assault force. This word is basically a neutralization technique, a neutralization word to allow us to identify friendlies and for friendlies to identify themselves to the dog in the absence of you, the handler, or me, the handler, since I was pointing at myself for the moment. But that allows them a tool, along with looking like you, to be able to calm that dog, to redirect it. And we're going to tie all of this together. I'm going to sidebar here and talk about this assaulter neutralization. You would be shocked, I tell you, to know the organizations that have had problems with this and some of the mitigation efforts that have taken place. One of which was Axe body spray. Taking Axe body spray and spraying from basically the crotch to the ankles of the handler, and then spraying crotch to the ankles of all of the assault force so that everyone had the same odor to their person. And if the handler smelled like Axe body spray and everybody else does too, then we will be able to mitigate assaulter bites because we all smell the same as the handler. And if the handler is the trusted agent in the dog's world, then anyone else who smells like the handler will likewise be viewed as a trusted agent or the handler himself and not be subject to a snap bite from the dog. If I haven't heard the most anthropomorphic bullshit in my life, I can't think of anything more extreme than that example. Why do I say that? Everyone in this whole group right here are already wearing the exact same uniforms provided by the same vendor from the same manufacturer, made from the same material, wearing a plate carrier made of Cordura, all with probably the same hygiene standard. If you're talking about a deployment or even here CONUS in training, the same type of water treatment, everyone using soap and shampoo. Here's another big kicker. The way dogs see the world visually, they look at silhouette more so than detail. Once you put on roughly the same plate carrier, the same uniform, the same helmet, the same over-the-ear hearing pro, everyone in the picture on this whiteboard at your organization, you all got your CQB training and your weapons handling training at the same schoolhouse. So everyone, including the handler, are all moving through this building using weapons, carrying them and moving them around in almost the identical fashion because you all went to the exact same training. You are already showing the same picture to the dog, the handler the same as the assaulters. You're dressed the same, made from the same materials, you smell close enough to be the same, and you all look the same going through a building. If you are having bites, it's because of your bite training, both the exercises that create too much of a defensive posture in the dog, and also your aid placement and the number of reps you're doing where the dog gets to bite an actual decoy. And you're not getting bit, assaulters aren't getting bit because of a lack of clear identification of your handlers. It's what you've allowed your dog to become. Period. End. There is no discussion in that. And I will take that to the mat with anybody who wants to have that argument. Period. End. Spraying Axe body spray on a person, if your dog is already capable of doing forensic level detection of target odors, such as bomb explosive material or narcotics or human remains or electronics detection or any other minute odors that you present to a dog as a target for detection, if they can smell that, but you, a 200 plus pound man, heat source, sweating inside of polycotton ripstop and Cordura and handling weapons and kitted out the same way as the handler, if you think that Axe body spray is what they need for their nose to be able to tell that you're the same guy as the handler, I can't even begin to sum up how far behind the curve you are if you really think that. And that was thought at one point in time. It is the training that you're doing. Your dog is not biting assaulters because they're confused. It's because they're frustrated. They've taken all of the foreplay they can handle. They are overdue by the amount of time, the duration of this assault. They are feeling edgy because of the amount of stress that has taken place on this assault. And especially if it's been a dry hole, a vacant building, if they were already moved off target before the assault and they get in there and it's empty, these are the reasons that your dogs are biting. It's not because you don't smell like the handler. So, with that being said, you need to come up with a name, a word. It can be any word internally to your organization, and you start way back here when you're doing toy throws. You start naming what you want your, we'll call it a safe word for your assaulters and people on the assault element. We'll call it Ram Truck, because there's one sitting right there off camera. And just so I can, no, we'll go with the badging. We'll call it Hemi. Hemi, that's our safe word to our dog to identify assaulters and a tool that we can empower assaulters with to help themselves in your absence. So when we start doing toy throws and the dog's in there, once they've picked up the toy, if they're going around the room and guys are in motion, weapon up, and the dog looks at them and they look a little bit intense, the handler is saying, first of all, I'm going to pair that with a preparatory to make sure the dog understands the context. So if they're looking at one of my assault element a little bit cross-eyed or a little too intense, Foy, I'm going to set the tone that that is not okay. And then I'm going to say, Hemi, Foy, Hemi, he's with me, that's a Hemi, don't. And then we will all begin to repeat that as necessary. We don't need to do it immediately at that moment in time around the room because the handler is there. Now, as we do other reps and the dog is down the hallway and an assaulter is coming and the handler is back here in the first room and the dog has the toy from the search and he's on double back, now the assaulters can start repeating it. Hemi, Hemi, as the dog comes up to them or is passing them, Hemi. They don't need to necessarily yell Phooey. That's for you to read and recognize what your dog is showing and intervene with that correction, that preparatory, that marker if needed, and let them know that no, that's not a target. But now we're going to have this word where we mark the guys on our team. Hemi, Hemi, Hemi. Guys can use that. So we're going to tie all of their mitigation practices together in one tiny package at the near the end of this. I know it's going long. I haven't even looked at the time, but my guy needs help, and it's a long subject, and I'm going to put it in. So having that verbal marker, team integration and placement options. So I know you've probably been asking up to this point, what does this look like? How do we build out our assault element? This is going to depend on your organization, how many people you have, and the type of work that you need to do. So because I have been asked by an active law enforcement handler right now, this is where I'm going to start with. And in my experience, in my view, this is going to be what I consider the butter zone. Is going to be 5 assaulters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got our dog represented there, but not our handler, so I'll go ahead and put him in. Is going to be our handler, who makes 6. So, speaking for law enforcement operations for now, and we can build out on this, 6, in my view and in my experience, is your ideal number. Why 6? Because in basic CQB doctrine, it takes at least 2 people to enter any given room. And you can go get a much deeper explanation of CQB doctrine from Dutch Chris Moyer at the Sawmill. He's happy to teach it, does a damn good job at it, and has a resume that, I mean, there's other people out there with the same resume, but there's nobody better, and he served through the entire arc of the GWAT from start to finish, so he's got you covered. Minimum of 2. So any given room, 1 going one way from the door, 1 going the other. It is the number 1 man's call on which side that he takes. Usually, if he's got a deep unseen corner, and from the breach, if he can see this is a short corner, and the sight radius gives him partial eyes on this wall, at least part of the way down, he's probably going to button hook and drive hard for this corner because this is the worst threat. It has the least visibility from outside the room. So it'll be boom, button hook, hit this corner, scanning this way. Our second guy will come in and look long, looking for this corner if this room had a corner, and then scan. And the 2 of them will start to overlap at the center of the room. If we have a third guy, he's going to come in and follow to the side of the room as the first guy, but picking him up visually about how deep he is into the room. And he's going to come out here driving into the middle, into this corner, and we're going to collapse down and end with overlapping coverage from all 3 of the guys in this room. That is a very short, super simplified first look at getting into this building. Now, the reason that I say 6 for law enforcement, 5 plus the handler, you're going to do 2 men to a room. That means if you've got 2 guys in the first room and then you continue the flow and these guys next 2 go past him, 3 guys are here, 2 flow into a room, 1 holds the hallway. As these 2 are done and they catch up with the assault, now we have 1 guy holding the hallway. We move up here and bump in, and we've got 2 more to flow into the next room and 1 to hold the hallway. And the 6th guy being the handler, who's moving in here and picking up work and falling into this ever-rotating workload. The assignments as they come in here, you may be 1 man into the room in the first room, then you might be holding security in the hallway, then you might be 2 man into the third room, then you're back on security in the hallway. But this is the basic flow of CQB, and for most residential houses, buildings, apartments, even office buildings, most room sizes of the places law enforcement agencies normally go, 2 will effectively cover a room. 3 is great, but anything more than that is overkill. And if you are doing a dynamic flowing assault, you're going to need to hold the hallway and be ready to go to the next room, or have two guys already going into the next room while you've got at least one guy holding the hallway. So that brings you to 5. So you can work 2 rooms and hold a hallway simultaneously with 5 guys. The 6th guy, being that additional fill-in, can also fall into that rotation as it moves along and be a guy in a room or a man holding security in the hallway. The good news is, as the handler is that 6th man, the minute that the dog is on the bite and requires handler support, now you still have that 5-man rotation to continue to do rooms and hold security in the hallway. So even if your dog is on the bite, you're going to control the dog. Someone else is going to hold cover on the bad guy if they aren't neutralized, or they're going to do the dead check after you pull the dog off of the guy that's already been shot. And that still leaves 4 guys, which can do at least 1 room and hold a hallway, or 2 rooms if necessary without holding the hallway if you're at the end of the building. So that's the explanation, very, very short strokes, on why I believe for law enforcement in most capacities, 6 is your target number. If you've got 8 out here, 7 or 8 plus the handler, if the handler makes 7 or 8 or 9 and you're trying to put that into your average residential structure or business, it's going to get too crowded too quick, and now it's going to be too much. The dog's going to be going through a lot of people's legs, which is fine, but your stress level on the dog, the stress level internally of the team is going to go up. In my view, given a structure just like the one I've drawn out here, more than 6 is more help than is useful. What I would recommend is, if you have a team of 8, 9, or 10, your assault element needs to be this 6, 5 assaulters plus the handler, and then you're going to stage 7, 8, 9, 10, and so forth outside the building as support. So if this was a larger building and we go breach bang dog and the dog's in here biting a guy, and we have contact straight away in the first room that bogs down the handler and stops the dog momentarily, if we have these guys out here in reserve as security, and we can say, hey, we need support in here for bad guy control, these 2 guys can flex in here and free up your first 5 to continue the assault. And now it's your handler plus 2 to do search, suspect control, dead check. Once these 2 guys that flexed in here have that dude, this frees up your handler and your dog to catch back up with the assault and release the dog to continue on the search if it's required, or if the building is big enough to accommodate that. And now these 2 dudes can either squat and hold here with our bad guy as needed, render medical aid, go ahead and bring him back out the breach to get him medevaced or more advanced treatment, whatever the case calls for. And then you've still got 2 more guys in reserve that can flex in there and do the exact same thing again. So with that being said, on your average building, I think 6 is your golden number. These guys all held back there in reserve until you call for support. Placement options. So now we've talked about the size element that we're looking at. Where does the dog handler go? This is just what I think will work best for most people. Are there certain organizations where the team leader, the number 1 man in this stack, has also been a dog handler? Yes. Yes, there have. Was he good at it? Very good. Was he successful? Super successful. Is being the number 1 guy in the assault and the dog handler for everyone? No, it is not. That is a lot of shit to manage right there. That's going to be pretty rarefied air in the assaulter and or canine handling community for you to be up there at number 1 with the dog and your first guy in. Is it good in some ways? Absolutely, because if the dog doubles back or reverses, you are the handler, you have the most rapport with the dog, you have the most experience with handling the dog, you can most likely straighten the dog out and reverse him and get him moving in the direction that you need him to, better so than anyone else. The part that becomes very difficult and elite is for you to be able to manage that dog and sort all that shit out and still be the first man in the room to establish the first security foothold in here, get deep to this corner and this corner over here and start shooting, identifying, and neutralizing threats while managing the dog. So with that being said, that's why I say it's not for everyone. That is a lot going on mentally and physically. Where should you be? For most law enforcement agencies, I recommend, if you're doing this dynamic CQB style entry high risk warrant service, that you are number 3. Why are you number 3? Because as we talked about with basic CQB doctrine, you need to get 2 guys into this room, and in normal CQB, sans dog, number 3 would be going to this middle piece of the pie right here as everyone collapses down. So we want guys to go through the building only peripherally aware of the dog, handling business, using their weapon system, scanning for threats, and clearing this building for bad guys. With that being said, that's their primary focus and should be their primary focus. If you are number 1 or number 2, that's a lot for you to handle. If you're number 3 and you've got a good number 1 and number 2 man, they are already in here and they have guaranteed by the time they've gotten here, they've already scanned the room and their lines of sight have crossed, and this is somewhat covered, if not completely covered already. So when you drop in here to double cover it, you can check here with confidence that your right and your left are covered, and then you can pick up visually what the dog is doing, and allows you to either call the dog to your side and try to reset and send him, fall in here. If you see the dog going down the hallway and they call clear on this room, that allows you to set up and immediately become the man holding security on the hallway and see where the dog is going. Once these 2 guys come up and form up with you, boom, the 3 of you are moving down the hallway, and then you're picking another room, and the flow continues as the 4th and 5th guy are in here. They're forming up with you, hitting the hallway and going into a room. For most law enforcement agencies, that's why I say number 3 is probably your best position, so that the foothold of security is established. You can get a read on the dog, manage their activities, and we can continue. Even if you're at number 6 for some reason, that's still okay. If your dog is pretty well trained and acclimated to this process and integrated, and you put him in from the number 6 position, you're still going to be all right with that. Other options. So we discussed team numbers, handler position. With breech bang dog, breech bang dog is largely an outgrowth, and entirely an outgrowth of the GWAT, because Special Operations has breaching charges and does explosive breaching or ballistic breaching on a routine behavior. Flashbangs are very common place in the Special Operations community, and then send the dog. So breech bang dog means this door is locked and closed and is otherwise secure. You